All right, today we're diving into some really fascinating ancient texts, and we're going to use them to decode the very operating system of our own minds. We're going to map out step by step how our reality gets built, moment by moment, and more importantly, how we can actually take that whole process apart.
It all kicks off with a question that I think pretty much everyone has asked at some point. Why do we suffer? Why is there so much stress and sorrow in our lives? What's so amazing about the texts we're exploring is that they don't treat this as some big, unsolvable philosophical mystery. No, they treat it like a technical problem, one with a very clear, observable cause and a super practical solution.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at a universal problem, a kind of fundamental law. Then, we'll trace this chain of arising. After that, we'll zero in on what's called the mind-body loop. That's the real engine of this whole thing. Then we get to the really practical part, the art of investigation. And finally, we'll see how all of this leads to the path of cessation. Okay, first things first. We have to understand the fundamental rule of the game here. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful idea, cause and effect. Basically, for every single thing we experience, there's a specific cause that made it happen. This idea, this law of conditionality, is the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about.
And this line right here, this is basically the core diagnostic formula. It's the key to the whole system. It's just a law of nature, right? When this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. This tells us that nothing, absolutely nothing in our experience is random. It's all conditioned. And really getting this is what unlocks the entire process.
Okay, so if suffering is the effect, then what's the cause? Well, these texts lay out this incredibly precise 12-step chain reaction. This means our suffering isn't just some random, chaotic mess. It's actually the predictable end result of a very specific, observable sequence of events.
So here it is. This is the whole chain, and it's known as dependent origination. And it all starts at the very top with avidya, which basically means not knowing, not really seeing things as they truly are. And this one single thing, this initial ignorance, kicks off a massive chain reaction that conditions our thoughts, our consciousness, our senses, right down the list until it culminates in what the texts call this whole mass of suffering.
Now, all 12 of these links are obviously important, but the texts really want us to focus on this powerful little engine running right in the middle of the chain. It's a critical feedback loop, and it's running constantly, generating our reality from one moment to the next.
But before we get into the loop itself, we have to understand this key term, Nāmarūpa. The easiest way to think about it is as the mind-body complex. It's you, the whole package. Nama is the mental stuff, feelings, perceptions, attention, that's the software. And Rupa is the physical body, that's the hardware. Together, they make up the complete organism that is having the experience. Okay, now here's the really crucial part. This is a two-way street. On one hand, consciousness, or vijnana, gives rise to the mind-body experience. But then, and this is the key to the loop, that very mind-body experience becomes the platform that consciousness needs to arise again in the next moment. They literally can't exist without each other.
This quote from the texts just nails it. This consciousness turns back from name and form. It does not go further. It's locked in this really tight loop. See, consciousness pops up based on the mind and body, and then the mind and body is experienced through that consciousness. It just keeps turning back on itself, feeding the cycle over and over again. This right here, this is the engine driving that whole 12-link chain.
So if that's the loop, the big question is, how in the world do you get out of it? I mean, how can you investigate the very trap that you're already caught in? Well, luckily, the texts give us a very specific, very practical tool designed for this exact job. And that tool is called Yoniso Manasikaram. Now, this isn't about just sitting back and passively watching things. This is an active investigation. It means to thoroughly trace an effect all the way back to its source. So feeling pops up. You ask, okay, what conditioned this? A thought appears? Where did that come from? It's like being a detective conducting a forensic investigation of your own experience. And listen, this isn't just some nice philosophical idea. The source texts say over and over again that this exact method, this act of tracing phenomena back to their causes, is precisely what leads to profound wisdom and direct insight. It is literally the key that turns the lock. Okay, so now we have the two pieces of the puzzle, right? We have the principle of cause and effect, and we have the tool for investigation. Now we can put them together to reverse this entire process. The logic is simple.
If the arising of a cause leads to an effect, then getting rid of that cause has to lead to the end of the effect.
The logic here is just so beautifully simple and symmetrical. We're just taking that first formula we looked at and flipping it completely upside down. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. You remove the cause, the effect can't happen. It's the off switch.
And this shows you exactly how it works in practice. When you use that investigative tool to really see the process clearly, that root cause, that avijja, that not knowing, it gets cut off at the source. And once that root is gone, the next link in the chain doesn't happen. And then consciousness doesn't get conditioned and the mind-body loop breaks down. The whole thing just unwinds link by broken link until it all stops.
And this really is the ultimate punchline. The problem itself contains the solution. Just by understanding how this whole structure of suffering is built, you start to deconstruct it. The diagnosis is the cure, and that's what leads to the cessation of this whole mass of suffering.
So, what we've just walked through, this isn't just some abstract philosophy. It's way more practical than that. Think of it like a user manual for your own mind, a direct diagnostic tool. It's a framework you can literally start using right now to understand your own experience.
So how can you start putting this into practice? First, just start to observe the patterns in your life. Notice how feelings come from contact and how craving can pop up right after a feeling. Next, really practice that yoniso manasikara. When a strong emotion comes up, just ask, what caused this? Where did it come from? Then, try to see that mind-body loop in action. And finally, you'll start to realize that when you don't automatically feed the cause, like a craving, the effect, the suffering, it just begins to lose its power.
You see, this isn't just about learning information. It's really an invitation to become a scientist of your own mind. The final question these texts pose is one that nobody else can answer for you. It's something you have to find out for yourself, through your own direct investigation. So, where in your own experience do you see this cycle beginning? Because that's where the investigation starts.